The wizards were some of the most mysterious beings in Middle-earth, and very few people knew the truth behind their origins, their nature, and their purpose. Even their abilities were somewhat vague, along with the extent of their power, and one of the more peculiar aspects of the wizards was their staffs. In today's episode, we'll be unravelling these artifacts to try and determine whether they had any intrinsic power within them, or if they were simply a prop of old age to help the wizards along their arduous travels. So throughout the books, we see quite a few examples of Gandalf using his staff while casting spells, and it seems that his staff acted like a catalyst, or an instrument that would amplify the wizard's ability. We get the impression that these staffs didn't have some intrinsic power within them that strengthened a wizard's spell, but instead they somehow helped the wizards to focus their magic in a single point, which allowed it to be more precise, and so more effective. Now, we'd like to be clear that this is speculation on our part, though it is based on numerous examples from the books in which we see the wizards using their staff to focus a spell. And we'll discuss a few of these examples. The most iconic one is probably that of Gandalf's battle with the Balrog, for Gandalf used his staff to strike the bridge of Khazad-dûm, which destroyed it, and this spell caused his staff to shatter in the process. It wouldn't make sense for Gandalf to strike the bridge with his staff unless it somehow helped him to direct his magic into it. And we get the impression that the power of this magic was so intense that it even destroyed his staff, which was acting as a conduit. The other examples are quite similar, though far less flashy. For example, we see how Gandalf drove his staff into a pile of sticks while muttering some magical words to set them on fire, or how he used it to strike the doors of Moria while whispering some passwords. In both of these examples, we see how the staff was used to focus his magic in a single point, which is why we believe that it acted like a catalyst or a conduit for his magic. There are also several passages that seem to hint that the staff was used as a magical weapon. When the Fellowship were ambushed by a pack of wargs, Gandalf walked towards them, lifting his staff up in a threatening manner, and this suggests that he was going to use it for some magical attack, because otherwise he could have simply used his sword, which would have been far more physically intimidating than a long stick. There is one crucial point that, in our opinion, confirms that a wizard's staff was a significant threat. When Gandalf travelled to Edoras to confront Theoden, Wormtongue ordered the guards to take away Gandalf's staff before he was allowed to enter the Hall of Meduseld. Now, Wormtongue was Saruman's closest servant, and so he must have had quite a good understanding of what a wizard was capable of, and the weapons they used. And so it's quite interesting why he was so specific and determined that Gandalf's staff must be confiscated at all costs. The most obvious reason is that Wormtongue understood the importance of a wizard's staff, and how it could help them to cast their magic. And it seems like Wormtongue's fear and caution was well warranted, for after Gandalf entered the Hall of Meduseld, he used his staff to create a thunderous sound and to darken the hall, as he freed Theoden from Saruman's grasp and influence. For completion's sake, we'd like to quickly cover the other examples of Gandalf using his staff to conjure magic. After Gandalf returned as Gandalf the White, he encountered the 3 hunters in the forest of Fangorn, who mistook him for Saruman. As they prepared to attack him, Gandalf lifted his staff to disarm them, causing Aragorn's sword to blaze with a sudden fire, Gimli's axe to fall from his hands, and setting Legolas's arrow on fire. The staff could also be used to create light, and we see how Gandalf used it as a light source to lead the Fellowship through the darkness of the mines of Moria. Gandalf would also use his staff's light to catch the attention of Gwaihir, the eagle, as he lay trapped upon the tower of Orthanc. And this begs the question, why didn't Saruman confiscate Gandalf's staff after he imprisoned him? Perhaps he was overly confident that it was impossible to escape from Orthanc. Or maybe he just wanted to appease Gandalf somewhat, so that he might warm up to the idea of forming an alliance with Saruman. It's hard to say though, so we'd love to hear your thoughts on it in the comments below. Now, considering all of this, it's quite clear that the staffs did help to amplify a wizard's magic. Or at the very least, they could be used to focus this magical energy in a concentrated area. And so the next question that we need to answer is, was there something special about these staffs that the wizards used? Could they make more of them? Or would they be permanently weaker after losing their staff? We know that Gandalf's first staff came from Valinor, for he was seen leaning upon it when he first arrived to the shores of Middle-earth. And Gandalf would eventually lose this staff after shattering it upon the bridge of Khazad-dûm. After Gandalf returned as Gandalf the White, he would manage to acquire a new staff in Lothlorien. And we also see how Saruman created another staff after Gandalf shattered his old one. This shows us that a wizard's staff didn't have to come from Valinor, but they could also be crafted in Middle-earth, though we don't know whether there was some special process behind their creation. Now, some readers believe that these staffs were crucial for a wizard to cast magic, and that they would be helpless without them. Probably because after Gandalf shattered Saruman's staff, he compared him to a snake with a single tooth. And he said that the only weapon that he had left was his voice. However, we believe that this conclusion is incorrect, for it would seem strange if Gandalf overlooked the fact that Saruman could simply craft a new staff. It's much more likely that Gandalf was referring to how Saruman had lost almost everything: his armies, his fortress, and Sauron's trust. And so Saruman was now powerless, with his voice being the only weapon that he had left. If this wasn't enough to debunk this belief, we also know of a situation in which Gandalf conjured magic without using a staff. And this is a clear indication that they weren't necessary for a wizard to cast spells, even if they might have amplified a wizard's abilities. For in the books, we see how Gandalf released a ray of white light out from his hand to scare off the Nazgûl while they were chasing after the garrison of Osgiliath. Apart from their use in magic, the staff could also be seen as a symbol of the wizard's status as a member of the Istari. Considering this, there might be a deeper meaning to Gandalf breaking Saruman's staff than simply destroying his weapon. We could interpret it as Gandalf having more authority than Saruman, and by shattering his staff, he symbolically expelled him from the Order of the Istari. The wizard's staff might have also served a practical use, for when the wizards were sent to Middle-earth, they arrived in the form of weak old men, which gave them a humble and wizened appearance. These weak forms were more appropriate for their mission, for the wizards were sent to help and guide the free people through wisdom and encouragement, rather than to control them with shows of power and force, and the staffs helped to complement their aged appearance. Anyway, this wraps up today's video, and we hope you enjoyed it. Do you agree with our analysis, or do you believe the staffs were powerless? Once again, we'd like to emphasize that this is speculation on our part, based on as much evidence as we could gather from the books. And since it's never confirmed or debunked, the best we can do is try to create a thorough analysis. As always, we'd like to give a quick shout out to all of the patrons who choose to support this channel. Your help makes this channel possible, and your support is deeply appreciated. Particularly the Valar-Tier Patrons, Jacob Williams, Michael Angel, and T-Gorman, and the Wizard-Tier Patrons, James Stodgell, Andrew Burma, Mike Feeney, and Roland Myrvold. If you'd also like to help and support this channel while unlocking some cool perks, we'll be leaving a link to the Patreon page in the video description. You could also support this channel by checking out our store and by following us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and joining our Discord server. All of these links can be found in the video description. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe to join our fellowship today. Until next time, when we'll once again explore the magical world and lore of Middle-earth.